disappeared from the place that you are in from a three-dimensional perspective. You have disappeared. You do not appear to yourself when you are focused on what has been or what will be. So focus on what you are right now, and you'll find that it is deeper, further, greater, morer and morer than your experience of this. This is just your spirit wanting to know what it is. What am I? What am I? But if I am not this body, and all of these experiences that I have in this world that confuse me and cause me great concern, then does that mean that those things don't exist either? Yes, they don't exist. But how do you tell someone who's barking at you for what you're not doing right, hey man, I'm just a figment of your imagination? How do you tell them that? You say, oh, I'm sorry that you're taking me the way you're taking me, but that's not the way I meant it. I've disappeared to you. You don't know me in this moment that you think that I would do such a thing to you. So let me refresh your memory about who I am. I am the nature of God within me that made me, and in this making of me, there is a body that has appeared before you. And in this body that's appeared before you, I've made mistakes to you, and I'd like to correct that for you. But how do you get there when they've arisen your emotions to such a degree you're like a child again? You're like a child again. So you're deep in these emotions, battling back and forth. How do you disappear from that moment so that you can be more spirit? Does anyone have an answer to that? How do you disappear from a moment of conflict when you're caught up in the emotion of it? Anybody have an idea? Okay. Gary, breathe. Exactly. Yes, the withdraw is the word that I was looking for there. But you're right. It is the true self that you are seeking in that moment. The hurt that you experience in emotion is really just the body's smallness. It's unable to encapsulate the totality of the conflict. So it holds what it is its own experience instead of the experience of the other. It cannot hold the experience of the other because it thinks it is too small. It thinks it is not enough. And this person that is identifying you as being not enough by telling you that the things that you did are what caused me to be how I am to you right this second, you can't hold that because it's like, no, I'm not. No, I didn't. That's the nature of the child within you trying to deflect the condition of knowing. The condition of knowing? Is it the condition? Yes, a condition of knowing. The condition of knowing. The is the I. Condition is the way that the I is representing itself in a situation. The condition of knowing. So in this knowing, what you're knowing is that the other person is hitting you with things that aren't true. They aren't true to you. So you deny them, deflect them. You get defensive because this isn't you. So you're not going to see yourself the way they're seeing you. You refuse to, because this isn't you. Their words are painful. It isn't you, so you're not going to hold on to that. Nor are you going to hold on to their words, but nor are you able to hold on to the understanding of what they are. It's only when you withdraw into the true self and let go of the conflict that's holding you in that moment, you disappear into the moment that is true, right? And into the moment that is true, that you're becoming within you. This is the higher state of being, that is the spirit of you saying, I see why they're hurting. I see what they mean now. I see what it is they really need from me in this moment. But in order to do that, you've got to take yourself out of the moment of appearance that is the three-dimensionality of your identity of the self. So we know that these words are difficult to follow because they incorporate the nature of things that humans don't usually talk about. Humans don't usually talk about appearance and disappearance. That's UFO talk. But how do you think UFOs are able to abduct? They've mastered the art of disappearance. It is a true nature. It is not just the way that you think about something. It is a real condition that you can turn your body into, a disappearance. Now, there's no way that we would be able to train any of you how to do that. You just have to accept on faith that there are creatures who have figured that out, and they are plucking human beings out of the human world just long enough to use them in ways that they need them, and then they put them back in. Now, the reason that this is part of this talk tonight, which is the spiritual development of the self, is that you must go into deeper ways of understanding yourself as you accept the phenomena of what you're experiencing as you pursue your understanding of the world. So it can't just be reading about UFOs and here's things that they're able to do, and then not see in yourself how you participate in the understanding of this. You participate in the understanding of its existence by actually imagining yourself disappearing. No longer in this world, identifying by this world, but by a greater nature that is very difficult to imagine. But as you imagine it, the deeper you go into who you truly are. The foundation of your most self requires you understand a most that is greater than the now. So, here's a way of thinking about it. When God first gave the song to Sondra, the song is, I focus on my brain to move me into an asking. And as I focus my brain in the asking, I make room for the answer, and that answer doesn't have to come from me. This is Sondra saying, just to the side, what was really bizarre of what I just felt is it was like God was just playing me just now. Did it look like that from your perspective at all? It did, didn't it? It looked like God was just playing me just now. So God says, well, we were. And the way that we do that is we go into you as you allow us to go into you. So you've put yourself in a position to be identified as a source call. Now, not everyone is built for this capability. So the identity always has to be, how do you call source? How do you call source? So in that ability, is there not a completely different reality than the reality you're forced into every day? Those of you who call Source on on a regular basis. Because when you call Source forth, you're actually saying to Source, I know you're greater than this thing that I know of me. And I know in this greater way of you, I can be the greatest of me. So this is the true spiritual development of the self, is when you call forth Source by identifying what is you within Source and Source within you. So to move into some more meaty structures, we would like to do a mini reading on someone in the room who would like to be an identifier that makes us, I'm like looking straight at you as if you're being called to, is that okay? Okay, come on up. Come on up. Your name is Francis? Come on up. Thank you. Yes, yes. Come here. I'm Sondra. Nice to meet you. Okay. All right. So, Francis, this is called a soul reading. And what happens is Sondra is able to feel into the auric field. And then in that auric field, she's able to dive into the way of your soul. And because that's where we reside, is from soul to spirit to Source, then we are able to show you through Sondra's mouth who you are. You ready? Okay. It's never easy. Okay, so God says the way to think of this, though, is not whether it's easy or hard, Sondra. It's whether or not there is a willingness to accept that which would be said in the reading. Because if the reading is not accepted, then the part of the soul that is rejecting it is the part of the soul that is hurting the most. I see. So that's why it seems hard to hear. Okay. All right. So God says, now, Francis, you were born to be something quite phenomenal, and the way that you are participating in that now is by showing your friends who they are in a reflection within you. So your friends see you, then they see themselves through you. There's ways that this works is not only in conversation, but also in their sudden realization that what you've said is hitting a bell. It's ringing a bell in them. So you haven't even said more of what you needed to say to them before they've realized what you mean by what you've said. Okay? Does that sound familiar? Okay. Now, the reason that works for you in that way is because you are a reflector. So all reflectors work in the nature of appearance and disappearance with regard to how is this moment related to the higher natures. So if you were to think about what is a higher nature, how would you describe one?
Somebody like Gary.
And what is it in Gary that you see as a higher nature?
His playfulness, his commitment to meditating, his love of life.
Right, love of life. That is the highest nature possible in a three-dimensional world, is love of life. Anything that is not rooted in love of life has to work on how to love life, right? So they're in a constant state of, how do I love this thing that is ruining me? How do I love this thing that looks nothing like love to me? So that can be in relationships, that can be in work, or any number of conditions that you are usually called upon to help people deal with, right?
Right.
So when you are called upon to help them deal with it, there is a process you go through. Do you know that process?
Not really.
So if we say there is a process you go through, what do you think is the first thing you do when somebody comes to you with needing to talk? What's the first thing you do in your mind or to them, any way at all?
I sit down and clear myself so I can handle what they're going to say.
This process is what gives the reflector a clear picture. And in your clearing of you, you clear it so that they can see themselves. You disappear because it's not about you, and you know that. This is about them. So you clear away anything that might be attached to your way of thinking of yourself that might damage their way of seeing themselves in you, right? Okay, so the profound nature of this particular type of soul work is rooted in how do I disappear from this moment enough, just enough, to give them the support of understanding who they are in a particular moment that is vexing them. And when this particular type of soul work is performed, it is actually a form of a blossom. It is the reflection of the nature of the way of a source being in the individual who's yearning to know the answer to their problem. I know that's hard to follow, but it makes perfect sense to you. Good, good. So we would like you to come up with a question that would help us help you, because you're going into another stage of your abilities. You're moving into a new phase of your abilities. And this phase has to do with your tenacity of sovereignty. So you must hold yourself sovereign and a oneness, right? So you're recognizing this. Tell us what you're seeing.
No, I'm like, are you sure? No, it's like, no, so what do you want me to what do you want me to tell you?
What you're recognizing in what we're telling you at the moment.
That it's time for me to quit being asleep.
Well, you've never really been asleep. You've just not given your... Yes. Yes. And the phase shift that you're going to be doing has to do with recognizing what you're doing has great power. That's all it is. It's a shift in your perspective about how valuable you are to those that you help. Okay? So what is it in the world that people see about you that makes them go to you, do you think?
Well, I'm a massage therapist, and so I make their bodies feel good, but also I think it's because I give them love.
You don't give love. You hold space for love to exist.
Right, okay.
So the more you understand that this is not something of you that you're giving, this is just something that you are making hold.
That's coming through me.
Mm-hmm.
Totally coming through.
But what we know, you already understand that coming through you part. But the thing that's going to get you to the next phase is your understanding of space. The space you hold as you stand in your power is a space of identity that is totally different than one who is just a channel for source. You become a radiant nature. And the radiant nature holds people still. Do you see how the importance of holding people still?
Holding still. I mean, that's that's the whole thing. Holding me still is like amazing. So I think that's what I'm going to have to learn to do, is to hold still.
Yes. But this is the beautiful challenge of your soul. The beautiful challenge is holding yourself still so that you can hold the space for others to be still. Because it's only in their stillness that you can reflect what is love within them. So what do you think might be some first steps you can take to create your stillness?
Meditate.
Meditation is definitely one, but sitting still is very difficult for you. So the
I can handle meditating, but not, yeah.
but there are other forms of meditation that you can use that will help you perpetuate the stillness. And that has to do with the walking meditations, yogic meditations. You're stilling your mind enough. And the only reason it's a challenge is because you have a very active imagination. It's constantly going, constantly going, constantly going. But as we're doing this right here, this is one way of reminding yourself. It's a tapping of your imagination so that you see nothing. Nothing. Whoa. It works. This is Sondra saying that works really well. That works really well. Did you guys feel it? Because I was like gone, man. I was gone. I disappeared there for a second. Okay, so that's going to be your step one, is taking this tapping nature here and understanding that you're stimulating the part of your brain that shuts everything else off. Okay, good. Do you have any questions that we can answer while you're here?
Solutions to when people do have pain, or when I have pain. What's a thing to let it go?
Pain is not always something you can eliminate. I know that people like to believe that it is, but the condition of the body can't withstand some of the higher natures very well. So you simply have to manage certain pains. Now, that said, there are some pains that you experience that you can flush out more and more, and they have to do with your source of healing in the space of hydraulic conditions. Hydraulic conditions. So hydraulic would be like the movement of, joints and things? Yes, joints. So joints who? Yes, who. This is a who. How is it a who? Because it's maneuvered in the space of identity. So this is a who. This is a who, right? Someone who is kind of feminine in this way. This is a who, right? A who that is like this is another who, right? So the question is, who are you being that would create joint pain? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So who is in this hip? Who?
An angry child. That's what Gary tells me. It's probably true. I mean, I feel it, so it must be a sweet little angry youngin'.
So would this angry little youngin' stand like this? So this pain isn't because there's something wrong with the hip. It's that she's not getting listened to. And this is to remind you. Yes. And what do you think she might be saying today?
Chill.
Chill. Why would she say chill?
Because she knows she needs to chill, but she doesn't want to chill.
And
Still, but you keep telling me to be still, so, but she doesn't want to. I don't want to, but she wants to. So.
And is it possible because you were always told to be still?
Probably.
No. Right? I don't want to be still. I don't need to be still.
Because I do want to go.
So you need a new identification with stillness. Stillness is a smooth surface and a deep water. It's a smooth ride. It's a glassy reflection. That's stillness. And when you learn how to be still in a brief moment, it extends to an eternity. So you can only take, let's say, 3 minutes of stillness because you're just too busy. You're just too busy. So I'll take 3 minutes of stillness. And if you make it your practice so that it is an everyday going there, you go into your next phase of your soul's development. So you have something to look forward to. Okay? Okay. Thank you, Francis. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. Give Francis a hand. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, the correction that we want to make with regard to how people see quiet and how people see abundance and how people see these traditional words that spiritual people use all the time. We want to make some corrections. Stillness isn't letting go of activity. It's the opposite. It's allowing all activity to be without you. You disappear from all activity, even though it's still going on. So you don't need a quiet room. You don't need the kids to shut up. You don't need the phone to stop ringing. All you need do is take this place of stillness within you and know that everything that's going on around you has nothing to do with you. Because I am a higher being that is looking into this body being as I look out into the earth way that is my participation to bring my soul to a higher understanding of what it is. So we want to take one last stroll in the park. And that would be, I'm sensing fire in her eyes. She is fire. You knew it was me. You knew you were next.
I really didn't.
You did too. I saw it on your face. Come up. Fire in her eyes. She has fire. This is Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie. So, what God wants you to see tonight, And we really appreciate you getting over any fears of coming up here to be here right now, because there is so much for people to learn just by seeing you that is you. The you that is you is a fire. But this fire isn't the kind of fire that consumes. It is the kind of fire that illumes. Mm-hmm. You recognize that about you? Yeah? Okay. So think about whose way you've lighted recently. Whose way have you lighted recently? You got that person in your mind? Not yet. Okay. We'll describe them for you. We'll describe them. They have two things that are terribly wrong, that they can't figure out right from left, up from down, in from out. And those two things are concerned with their responsibility in a relationship and their ability to keep a job in service to their own, I'm seeing a roof over your head? Yes, in service to their own survival.
What came to my mind was my two brothers. Yeah.
That's what I saw as males. Yeah, males.
Yeah, I talk to them all the time. And one's very sick physically, and the other's very sick emotionally.
That's
Family issues, yeah, big time.
so how is it that in your illuminating that they seem to still remain in the dark? Why do you think that is?
Wow. They don't listen. They don't listen. I'm very internally oriented, internally inward looking, and they're very outward looking. And I have learned not to give people a lot of advice that they're not ready to hear. And the best thing I can do is, live my life by example. But I operate in just a different sphere than they do, because I'm very, very much looking to source all the time. I'm very, very internally oriented.
So now we want you to think about how illumination occurs on an internal level. The illuminated interior requires that you see yourself in what way?
You see yourself as light in service.
So these two that are still in the dark is because they cannot
See themselves as light in service.
because everything that they need, they don't have in their mind. They think they don't have what they need.
Well, one of my brothers, all he does is talk about money, and he has so much money, and he hoards it, and he doesn't enjoy it. And he keeps a very dysfunctional relationship with a woman going. And he thinks he's helping her, but he is holding her back from her growth. It's very, very dysfunctional.
And the reason is because he doesn't think he has what he needs, so he hoards and hoards and hoards because he doesn't have what he needs. People who hoard, whether they're hoarding food or they're hoarding things, it's always about trying to satisfy a deep need. So you, as an illuminated nature, are quite capable of giving him a clue about what he's looking for. But you're saying he won't listen to you.
He doesn't listen. When you talk to him, it's like he's having a conversation with himself. There does not need to be anyone there at all.
So we want you to try an experiment with him.
I'd like some ideas.
Because this is going to help you see you in a way that you never thought you could be, because this is your hardest case. You work with other people all the time, but they're much easier to deal with. But we want you to try this experiment first on your hardest case, and then we want you to use it every single time somebody comes to you for help, okay?
Good. Yeah.
So what you say to him is, I'm sorry, what'd you say? What'd you say? I thought you said, but is that what you said? So what you're doing is demonstrating what listening looks like. Don't tune him out. Don't turn him off because you're sick of hearing him. Okay? But for the first time, we want you to listen to the words coming out of his mouth, even though you've heard them 1,000,000 times. And we want you to hear between the words. And listen for that between the words and start getting it. You're going to start getting it, but until you get it, you're going to say, I'm sorry, what'd you say? What'd you say? No, I heard that part, but what'd you say right after that? And keep repeating this technique with him. And after a while, he'll get sick of repeating himself.
Maybe he'll notice he's repeating himself.
He will notice he's repeating himself. Because you will appear in the room. You see how you disappear with him?
Oh, yeah, I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
So we want you all to try that technique with somebody who repeats themselves over and over and over again and won't learn from their own problems. You ask them, what'd you say? What'd you say? And then they'll have to analyze what they just said. And they'll have to repeat it. Is that what you meant to say? Are you sure you meant to say that? Okay. Okay. So we would love to answer any question for you before you sit down. What would you like?
Well, what comes to mind is mission and purpose.
This is a very important condition for anyone to wonder about. But for you, the reason this is even more important is because you're starting to come to a place in your life that you're saying, have I accomplished what is my mission and purpose? And if I haven't, is there enough time?
And just clarity, because I'm really feeling that I'm moving through a lot of karma. And I'm really, loving the golden light meditation. And I have always had a meditation practice, but this is kind of moving me to, I feel, another level. And I just want, would like clarity of the next things to do.
The way that the trueness of this golden light meditation works is that you are forced to look within you in a moving way. The being within you starts to move as you notice it moving. It's always moving, but in the meditation, you're noticing it moving. It's real being.
It's moving out of the body.
Right. What happens is not out of the body, your tenacity for understanding the being you are actually expands beyond the body, but you're still in the body. You're just expanding your awareness of yourself into the higher ways of you, because the higher ways of you are there without you knowing it. That's what's puppeting the body. It's what's giving the body life. Otherwise, this is lifeless matter without it. So the lifeless matter you're recognizing, because in conjunction with that lifeless matter is the life that's living in this matter, right? And you notice how much bigger it truly is. So your purpose in this lifetime is totally related to your understanding of matter with regard to spirit. Because what matters to spirit? What is the matter that spirit is altering when altering occurs through healing, or altering can also occur through just feeling? What is the matter of the condition of spirit moving through the matter? What is the matter of the condition? So you'll take the word matter and you'll do a, God's given me the picture of it, but I'm not sure I can pull up the word for it. It's like a brainstorming board. Storyboard. Yeah, it's like a storyboard. And the word matter is in the center of it. And branching off from that is all of the uses of the word matter. And then the word spirit also will have its own board. And all of the uses of spirit will go through that. And you're going to study those two and start to see how they are interrelated. And your purpose in this life is to take this information and take this research that you come up with it, within it, and deliver it to a very specific person. That day will come. We can't tell you who, where, or when. All we can do is tell you that matter and spirit are what matter to your spirit. Okay? Okay. Well, thank you. Give Bonnie a hand. Thank you very much. That was cool. That was cool. I like that. I like that. Matter and spirit. Matter and spirit. So, what time is it? And do we have questions starting to come up yet? So let's take this into now interaction with our audience and answer some questions that might be helpful.
So the first question is, could you please describe the process of sleeping from a spiritual viewpoint? Is it possible for us to make spiritual progress during our sleep, and how?
Wouldn't that be convenient?
So I can repeat the question for our live streamers explain the process of sleeping? Say that again.
Yeah, can you describe the process of sleeping from a spiritual viewpoint?
When
Is it possible to make spiritual progress during our sleep?
Remember, it's like homework you wanted to be able to do through osmosis? I'm sorry.
And how?
And how. So God says, yes, your sleep is highly spiritually attached. Your body detaches from the life that it's living so that it can experience what it is in the non-living. That's what dreams come from, the non-living. So it's hard to describe this because everyone believes that life is life eternal, and it is, but life that's life eternal has boundaries. There are certain conditions where there is a temporal nature, and in that temporal nature you have death, and in death there is no being. But that can only occur in that which has no life after the life. Is there any such thing as something that has no life after the life? The answer is no, there's no such thing. but there is no life in life. So let's say your skeletal structure is rock, is really what the skeletal structure is. It's stone. It's an organic form of stone, but it is stone. So it exists beyond the life of the body because the only way for it to wither away is the way that stone withers away. It erodes. It doesn't decompose like the body does. The body decomposes because all of the life that's living life is taking this life and putting it somewhere else in life. It's recycling it. But the stone that is in the body is the unlife within the living life. Okay? So, in sleep, what happens is that the life that is living life is seeing itself as no life, which is this sleeping way, right? If you imagine somebody sleeping there, they're lifeless. There's an appearance of lifelessness in sleep. They are living in the condition of no life so that they can examine the life that they are living when they are alive, which some would say awake, but we say alive. They go from lifelessness to liveliness. So lifelessness isn't necessarily a disembodiment of spirit. It's actually a remembering of that which is not body. The dreams? Yes. Dreams are a remembering of that which is not body. That's why you're able to do things in a dream that you can't do in a body? Right. So the remembering that the body's doing while it's sleeping is it's remembering the spirit that is capable of anything. So it can fly, it can breathe underwater, it can kill that which it loves, it can even die and come back in a dream. Because this is what's true in the spirit nature. The spirit nature can do whatever it is it chooses to do so long as it knows it. It knows it. It can't do what it doesn't know in spirit. So it has to know in order to do something. So when you think something in this three-dimensional world, you have to take the thinking and turn it into a doing with your hands, with your body, in some way. You have to turn it into a doing. That's not true in spirit. You simply think it and you're there. So, back to the original question, which is, what is the spiritual significance of sleep? Is that it is the body remembering what it truly is in spirit, using the body as symbols. So your dreams are symbols of what the spirit truly is and what the soul is trying to tell you and what you have to remember about this world that you're in, or you're going to be hurt, or it's a prophetic dream telling you that you need to be aware of what's coming up. This is the spirit of you understanding the knowing of you and moving through the abundance of you. There was another part of that question, though, I wanted to make sure God asked. It's like, how do we raise our spiritual awareness while we're asleep? So the best way to use sleep as a spiritual study is to put a pad and pen next to your bed, and when you are awakened in the night by spirit, you write down the dream that spirit gave you. And you do that in a succession of a cycle. So a succession of a cycle might be 7 days or 7 weeks or 7 months. You do it in a cycle so that you can start to see patterns. And in those patterns, you start to recognize the soul of you, the spirit of you in a pattern because it's yearning for something, or it's denying something, it's resisting something, or it's loving something, it's needing something. There's always a condition in these dreams to tell you something. And it's in that pattern you start to recognize in the cycles for writing down the dreams that you become a more spiritually aware individual.
So the next question is, could you please describe the process of imagination from a spiritual viewpoint? And how can we use our imagination to make spiritual progress?
Brilliant. So the question is to explain what imagination is from a spiritual perspective, and then how we can use our imagination to make spiritual progress. Now, if there is any way to make spiritual progress, it's through the imagination. You cannot make spiritual progress without the imagination. The imagination is what is stimulating your understanding. So if we had you close your eyes right now, take a moment, close your eyes, and we want you to imagine a meadow. In that meadow, there is a flower. Gary, what color is that flower?
It's a sunflower. It's golden and beautiful.
Cool. And who else has a different flower? What is it, Francis?
It's kind of like a pink or fuchsia, Indian paintbrush type flower.
Oh, neat. So each of you probably has a totally unique flower. The act of enacting your imagination is you participating in your spiritual work, the work. The flower you saw is a representation of you. The spiritual worker goes into that flower and finds out, why does my flower look like this? What is it about this flower I need to understand? And listens to the answers. All imaginations are portals to any world you want to visit. Any world. And the deeper you go into your imagination, the more you'll start to see it working for you instead of you working on it. So when we tell you, okay, now imagine a meadow, this is you putting this into your mind to make this imagined way, make this imagined picture. But when you start training yourself to pursue the imagination based in a question you might have, and you keep following it and following it and following it, you'll find that it has fragrance, it has sound, it has pictures, and it has feeling. But you must find the stillness within it in order to allow that imagination to move you further and further into your nature. What is your nature? That's what you find out in your imagination. Do we have any more?
One isn't really a question, it's just wanting you to talk about the Ebola hysteria.
Talk about Ebola. That's funny. I did that on a radio show recently, and I said, there's no Ebola in my world. So God says the Ebola virus is just nature representing its own conflict. So it's in a state of its own human conflict. The condition of the human world right now is suffering from its own consumption. It's consuming itself until it's nothingness, right? So the viruses and diseases are going to symbolize exactly the problem that humans are in. And the only way to rid the human problem of Ebola is to rid the human problem of overconsumption. And that turns humans into producers instead of consumers, which takes a great effort. It's not something that can be done overnight. But that's why each of you are here now, because you are working on that very important thing for humans to arrive at in the generational shift. It's not something in your lifetime that's going to have a profound impact. It's going to be the generation that you impact that's going to have the biggest impact. Their generation. So that shows you how important your generation is. You have to get on the path. Otherwise, it's a lost generation. Does anyone in this audience have a question? Yeah? Anyone? Okay. So the last thing that we want to discuss tonight has to do with how immediacy works in identification. Immediacy. So when you have a feeling in your mind, let's put a feeling in your mind. Let's put the feeling of hyperactivity. Hyperactivity. When you have that feeling in your mind, what are the other feelings that are actually creating that hyperactivity? Can you name a few of those? Worry, fear, hunger, discomfort, right? Nervousness, right. So hyperactivity then is a condensed form of all of these other feelings. It's condensed into a hyperactive body. So why is it important in the nature of immediacy for you to identify what's hyper? It's kind of a riddle God's giving you. To identify what's hyper. I don't know why I wanted to do that. Okay. So God says, the one that is hyper is the one that is feeling all of these other feelings. So the immediacy is that's the immediacy. The identity is, why am I so hyper? What's going on with me? And then you go through each feeling that's creating that hyperactivity. And if you follow it deeper and deeper, you find out an identity that you're being in this moment. So who here might have had a recent hyperactive moment that we can discuss? Francis, did you? You don't want to talk about it?
Well, that's why I have a hard time meditating, because I get so...
Gotcha. Okay, so that's why God brought it up. Is that right? Yes. So the way of the identity, Francis, is that you have to situate, is that the word? No. Situate yourself in the condition. Situate yourself in the condition. So imagine yourself in a hyperactive state. Situate yourself within that hyperactive state. Notice that you, that is the you, is not hyper. The you that is the you is in the stillness of analyzing your hyperactivity. Yeah? So you can see in the identity of this hyperactivity who you are being in the hyperactivity. So let's talk about a recent episode where you could not still yourself. What was going on? You had to be somewhere. Had to be somewhere. And at a certain time, right? Had to be somewhere at a certain time. Otherwise, if you didn't get there, how would you identify yourself?
Not good. A failure.
A failure, yeah. As somebody who is not responsible, undependable, unworthy, right? So that hyperactivity is actually the result of all of these other conditions. I'm not enough. I'm not enough that I can show up late, apologize, and say, man, I don't know what got into me today, but I just couldn't get here on time today for some reason. People never say that. They come up with all kinds of excuses, don't they? They're like, oh, the alarm didn't go off, or they'll come up with a really good reason why they're late, instead of, I really don't know what got in my way today, why I couldn't get here on time, but I really apologize. That's you knowing that you're enough, right? You're enough. So the immediacy of identity means to analyze the body's reaction to what you are seeing yourself as being in that moment. Not enough is usually what creates the biggest conditions, not enoughness. I'm enough. I'm enough. The last thing we want to discuss for tonight, and then we'll get to some final details about this weekend, and let Gary maybe take the stage to talk about the meditations that you'll be learning about. The last thing that we want to discuss is how hard is hard. As hard as you make it. That's right. So there isn't anything in this holiday season for you to find hard. Hard to live with, hard to be with. No matter how hard it's been in the past, it doesn't have to be that hard, because it's just a condition of the immediacy of your identity that is determining how you're feeling about the place that you're in when you're around people that drive you crazy. Okay? Yes, that's coming up. A whole season of being around people you adore but who drive you crazy. So pay attention to your bodies. Pay attention to the immediacy of your nature. And look and see, is it telling me I'm not enough? Is it telling me I'm not enough because I keep hearing from these people that I'm not enough because they don't understand me, for sure? So when you hear that in your body, that I'm not enough, what are you going to say? I am enough. I am enough. Enough is enough. And it's only as hard as you make it, right? I love that, Ashley. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay. All right. So is there anything else you wanted to?
You being a match to a situation you created subconsciously.
So let's take a little break, and that's a brilliant question. We'll address that after the break. Let's take a 10-minute break and just kind of shake it off and allow things to settle in. And I'll see you back in your seats in 10 minutes. So intermission, everyone. Coffee and tea. So we're back. It's time. It's time. So we got some questions that came that were just really brilliant, and I look forward to working with them, but I've forgotten the question that we broke with.
How can you tell the difference between a sign from the universe or being a match to a situation you created subconsciously?
Wow, that's such a great question. How can you tell if something is a sign from the universe or a match that you've created subconsciously? Okay. So whenever there is a vibrational match, what's really going on is that which you are being is that which you are doing, and that which you are doing is that which you are being. That's what true karma is. You are what you do. That's karma. You are what you do. So if you treat people like crap, right, you're a crappy person. You are what you do. And the way of that with regard to vibration is, how do you show up in a world where you could do really anything you wanted to do? Right now, you could walk out that door and do anything you wanted to do. Nothing is stopping you. Absolutely nothing is stopping you from doing exactly what you want to do. But what does stop you? The thing that stops you are the conditions that you've placed on your life, and these conditions are what develop into your way of being, because these are the things that you're doing, which are the things that you're being. So this is the vibration that you're bringing into the world, and so what gets drawn to you is the vibrational match to all that you are doing and being, because you can't see anything else. That's why you can't walk out that door and go, I'm going ice skating. Just out of the blue. Because it doesn't fit within your way of doing and being. So even if the perfect mate for you suddenly came across your path, you wouldn't recognize them, because they aren't fitting into your doing and being yet. You're not going to draw them until your doing and being is a vibrational match for that perfection. And really, that's just a change of observation of the self, observing the self in a different way of perfection, one's own perfection. You start to see others' perfection as you see your own. So as a sign from the universe, however, usually the universe uses signs to knock you off your standing. It's not going to be some simple thing like, oh, I think we're supposed to be together because the universe put us together. That's not how we do it. What the universe does is takes you from where you are and says, go somewhere else. Because where you are right now is killing you. It's either killing you spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, or physically. So that's how you tell the difference between a sign from the universe and a vibrational match. So did any other questions come up? That Did they ask what are the nature of those?
Yes, and
Two.
how can they be managed?
Okay. Patience and ambition. So ambition requires patience. True ambition is after it no matter what, goes after it no matter what. So sometimes that requires you waiting for the what to show up at the right time for you to be ambitious toward it. So how do you use patience to be better ambitious would be our question in that. How do you use patience to be better ambitious? Better ambitious. You take the waiting and you turn it into a game. The waiting into a game. And the game is, what will I be when this thing shows up? How is that a game? Well, because if you're thinking that you're not that already, and then you identify with what you think you're going to become when it shows up, then you're playing a game with yourself that says you're not enough already the way you are now. So you've got to keep going after what it is you think you want in order to be more of what you are. But patience says, I'm already that. I'm just building the density of it. It's becoming more dense as I walk toward it. I'm already that. It's just appearing in a deeper way for me. So you never want to go out into the world with an ambitious mind saying, I'm going to be this, I want to be that. You say, I am this, and I'm getting better at being that. So patience is noticing that you're getting better at being that. Ambition is, I already am that. Can't you see that about me? I already am that. I'm just getting better at it. So anytime you tell someone what you're going to be, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Okay? That's it on that one. Okay. So there were a couple of questions that came up over the break that were really great that we wanted to address. One of them that I'm curious about too, so we're going to hit that one first, is what is deja vu? What is that? What is that experience? So God says, the deja vu is the condition of the brain having a crosswire. And that crosswire is crossing between the immediacy of mind, which some people refer to as short-term memory, and then that crosses over long-term memory, and long-term memory and short-term memory become an immediate adjustment. So let's say I have a deja vu of looking through those doors behind you. I distinctly remember that happening once before, that I looked through those doors. But I've never been here before, so how could that be that I would think that I've seen myself looking through those doors? The memory of it has existed now with the experience of it. So memory and experience are simultaneous. That's what causes the effect of the deja vu. Now, the imagination, however, that's related to that, how one imagines where one is what we were talking about with Amanda. The imagination is actually the trigger point for that memory, because it's never happened before, right? If it's never happened before, but you're imagining that it has happened before, then the imagination is indoctrinated into the memory. So the reason this is so profound to us, but maybe not so to humans, is that when memory and imagination are together, what does that say about each of those things? Memory and imagination. Anybody have an idea? Yes, yes, they can coexist. Of course, they do coexist.
Same thing.
They are the same thing. The same thing. Memory is nothing but your imagination. Yes, Karen. And all of it is just a figment of your imagination. So, and that's brilliant that you brought that up just now, because that's the nature of the deja vu, is that it is telling you you've experienced this before, but that figment of your imagination can't be trusted because you've proven already, well, I've never been here before, that can't be true. So if imagination and memory can't be trusted, then that gives you more leverage when you try to get over things in the past that damage you emotionally. Okay? It gives you more leverage on that, knowing that this is your imagination and therefore it is under your rule, under your dominion, your rule. So you can change that imagination. You can change the effects just by changing what happened in the past in your own mind. And you do that very easily by changing the perspective of the memory. So you listen to someone else's memory of the same memory, and you find that it's a completely different memory, so that changes your memory, and suddenly your memory is no longer valid, so none of it is valid. So therefore it has no effect on you anymore. That's where understanding and family counseling comes in handy. Okay. Another great question Amanda asked is, how do we clear unworthiness? If we're feeling unworthy and we see it affecting, like for me, this is Sondra saying, for me, my experience of unworthiness, I can misread your faces. I can misread your faces. Even though I'm standing behind these eyes and I'm listening to what God's saying, if your faces don't tell me that you're understanding what God's saying, then I feel as if God isn't enough. Isn't that awful? As if God isn't enough. So it's so easy to run afoul on unworthiness just by misinterpretation. Or even that I should care, because the truth is, I love to hear what God's saying. I love hearing it. This to me is a fulfillment of my great way, my great being. So you guys are trapped here for the 2 hours, but I get to be this in front of you while you're here, so I appreciate your presence. So how do we clear unworthiness? And God says, Sondra just demonstrated it. She showed you her vulnerability and how this vulnerability makes her feel in a moment that everyone can recognize in their own life. Moments of not feeling like enough, not feeling that your greatest parts are going to be recognized or understood. And then sharing this feeling of vulnerability. Not victimhood. It's not victimhood. It's vulnerability. It's opening up the mind to the heart of you that needs to be heard. So, clearing it, that's right, clearing it is holding on to the part of you that is true and allowing the untrue part of you, Release as others allow you the space to be the true you. That's good. I like it. I like that. Okay. Now we would like to work with a friend of Amanda's who has a very interesting condition. So we would like to work with you for a moment. So please come up here, Karen. Come up and take the hot seat. So Karen has a situation that her life, this is God talking now about you and your soul, okay? It's a soul reading now. So God says, in your life, you have multiple conditions of unworthiness. But these senses of unworthiness are not related to this lifetime. It's not your childhood. It is your past lifetime, the just past lifetime. So what happened in that lifetime is you became a prisoner. Man or a woman? Woman. You became a prisoner. Sheesh. I mean, I'm seeing the whole dark cave, torches, and iron gates, doors, everything. And I'm seeing you in total despair. Total despair. Did she pass in prison? Yes. Why was she in prison? This is the most important part, is why you were put there. You were shouldered. You were shouldered. So what's it mean to be shouldered? Situate your mind to think about a time in history when people could not function without the church's approval. The church required its citizens to participate in the building of a church, in the function of the church, in the ways of the church, meaning they had to be a congregation coming at very specific times, and in those very specific times they had to gather every single Sunday, Saturday, Sabbath. They were forced to reconcile everything that occurred in their daily activities by how the church would respond. Okay? So imagine then an individual who had I'm seeing somebody like a Joan of Arc who was capable of hearing God, right? In a big way. Okay? So this woman that you were was a deeply gifted spiritual servant. And in your service, you made people feel well again, like healer, not the same as a healer. Empathic. You were an empathic healer, where you literally took on people's conditions. Okay? When you took on these conditions, you became overburdened by a particular soldier of the court, like a prince, a knight kind of thing? No. A soldier of the court isn't necessarily a soldier of the court. court would be someone who, someone who, like a guard? No.
A deacon.
Yes, a deacon, a soldier of the court. Yes. Now, when you did that, however, this was made into witchery in the mind of the deacon. Because you can't possibly heal someone who was suffering so badly without being a witch. But because you healed someone who was so significant in the community, you were not burned at the stake or done to the way many of the others who were capable of this kind of work were done to, what was done to them. Instead, you were just thrown into prison and forgotten. Can you see how someone who was forgotten by society, by family, by the church, by the world, forgotten until the days of your life grew shorter, your ability to feel yourself in this life grew less and less, and you drifted and drifted in and out of consciousness until eventually you were no longer a body that was conscious, but you were a mind, a spirit of being that was in despair, deep, deep, deep despair. So what you have to do is understand that this was done to you. You did nothing wrong being who you are. But when you're thrown into prison and society just shuns you, you're going to take on the feeling that you caused it. You made it happen. I did something wrong. I shouldn't have healed him. If I hadn't have healed him, I would still have my life. I shouldn't have done that. You see how that becomes a destruction of your greatest way, your greatest gift? Suddenly you tell yourself over and 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 over. I shouldn't have. If I hadn't have, I wouldn't be. So when a soul carries a deep, dark condition into its next incarnation, situations that arise that seem very simple but have an emotional effect are really affected by that soul's inability to reconcile how their damage occurred. You can't reconcile how your damage was occurred when you did exactly what was your gift to do, and yet it ended in such tragedy. So how does one become their greatest way in this life when while they're being their greatest way in a previous life, they're destroyed? Well, you can't. So you're stuck until you heal from a soul level that past. And that takes imagination, a serious imagination. Being able to imagine yourself in that place, feeling you, the soul, experiencing that, and then telling that soul over and over again, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You did exactly what you were born to do. And the world just wasn't ready for you yet. But that's not your fault. that the world wasn't ready. And in fact, how lucky I am that I wasn't burned at the stake. How lucky I am that I was just thrown into a prison. But you have to change that around with your imagination by saying how lucky I was that they recognized my value enough that they didn't take my life. So there's hope for humanity. There's hope for new generations. That's why I'm in this life now. So that in this life, because in this time, in this way of humanity, nobody's going to get thrown in prison for healing. Can you see the change in her face? This is you recognizing you, even if it's just in a glimpse, a brief glimpse, you recognizing your great way. And now the time in human history can support you instead of cast you out. It can support you. So you have many yet to heal. But the first you have to heal is who? You. Is she an empath? Oh, yeah. Much of your problem with emotions is you feel everybody's emotion. Right? And until you can clear your own tragedy, the emotions that people have that hurt the most just keep sticking. They keep sticking. This is your soul's overcoming, and you are quite capable of doing it, and you have a whole host of angels waiting to help. But first you have to recognize that this is possible. Okay? This is possible. Give me a hug. Come here. I felt your empathic way in that hug, and it was just so beautiful. Wow. It's just crazy. I did a reading for an empath the other day, and God always gets mad at me, or not mad at me, but reminds me that when people want a reading, God gives into their mind how much time they need, you know, whether it's a half hour or 15 minutes or an hour. And sometimes if there's time, I like to go over if I'm really intrigued by the reading, especially if somebody is needs a little extra help and they don't have a lot of money for a full hour, I want to help. But unfortunately, that can have a drastic effect on my health if I go beyond my own ability to help. And the reading I did for a woman, she was an empath, but hadn't really known her empathic way long enough to really master it. So all of the emotions she carried of other people were on her when I was reading her. So I was carrying all those emotions that were, and by the end of the reading, I was just a puddle of nothing on the floor. So empaths have a very, very important job, and they are designed specifically to handle it. But there are some distinguishing features of your body that you really need to pay attention to, because this is the one ability that that causes the most cases of breast cancer than anything else, are empaths, and they don't know they're empathic. So all those emotions of other people are just building up into their lymphatic system. So how are we on time? 9:04. I did it. I did it. Okay. Sometimes God gives such amazingly dense information, and you have to watch or listen or read, however the course is coming to you, over and over again until it starts to make some serious sense. And once it makes serious sense to you, then it starts having more layers to it. Right, Gary, wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, so many layers. It's just, as you go over the readings and go over the information, you'll find that there is this depth after depth after depth. You just keep going deeper and deeper into nuances that are enlivening and quickening your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
They come from a spiritual place rather than a human place.
Right, right. Enlivening from a spiritual place. Mm-hmm. Yes, dear.
I'm just curious real quick for both, whenever you were just feeling like you were puddle on the floor, what did you do then? How did you yourself or whatever?
Yeah, that was really hard. Thankfully, I think I was having a conversation with you after that, or sometime near that. So someone like Gary is very beneficial for me because just connecting to him on the phone, I suddenly feel the golden light coming through me. That's just his ability to emanate that, as he is pure being. That's one way that helps me. One woman I spoke to, she does it. She looks for whatever it is that's going to give her an immediate sense of joy, to go straight to that thing that gives you joy, even if it's just petting your cat or your dog or something, or the joy has to fill up the hole that all those other emotions create. Yes, Gary?
In the case over here, even though there's a part of the soul that's wounded, there also has to be another part of the soul that is totally still in that enlivened God Christ state.
Mm-hmm.
And so one can then call upon the higher part that sees the bruise on the soul and not identify so much with the bruise, but keep calling to that which you really are, is one with God.
Right.
Be with the bruise.
Right. Because that's the part of your soul that's said to Source in the first place, I'm willing to go back down again on earth and fulfill this mission, even though I know I have a lot to get over as a soul. I'm willing to go back and do it again. That higher being is the being of you that actually has forgotten all of your pain. So you're going to start calling on that one on a higher way. Okay.
And Sondra, doesn't also, though, the soul in one way somewhat purposefully put itself into that position so that it can hone and teach itself how to really be in the human world and not be overshadowed by it? It must have.
Yes and no. Yes, in that, of course, the soul is constantly challenging itself. But on the other hand, there's never a clear picture as to what the humans are going to do to you. There's never a clear picture about what that's going to be. So, yeah. So thank you all very much. Yay. Thank you so much. You were awesome. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. I am here doing readings also for people, so if anyone wants to do a reading with me, I'm available to set up those and schedule those while I'm